Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Land Your Ground Podcast, the video podcast for landowners and dreamers. And today we're going to be focusing a lot on habitat management, land ownership, and some regenerative agriculture and food plotting. I have a really cool guest that I'm excited to be joining with today, and he's got a lot of interesting insights, a lot of experience, and has met with some of the leading minds in habitat management from across the country. And so I think he's going to bring a lot of cool perspective to the table, and I'm excited for that. And I hope you guys get a lot out of this. If you do, I would love for you to like and subscribe to us here on podcast or leave us a review on Spotify and Apple. Means a lot to us. It really helps us grow the channel, helps us grow the podcast, and continue to get great guests. So, without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to my friend, Jared Van Hees. Jared, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks, Chase. Happy to be here. That was quite the introduction, and I'll try to live up to it the best I can. So
Well,
appreciate it.
there's a lot more to you, I'm sure, than what I barely touched on. But we've known each other for a few years. I think I started following you. A mutual friend became, I want to call a super fan of your Habitat podcast and a client of ours, and just really dove in deep. And I think he's part of your tribe now officially. And so Sam Carosa, I'm going to give a shout out to my bro Sam. And he's I think the first one that kind of directed me or pointed me to you guys and said, you guys are legit. You need to tune in and be listening to some of these episodes that you guys were cranking out. Of course, it's no secret to people who've known me for very long that I'm a big deer hunter, habitat junkie through and through. I love conservation. I'm just passionate about it. I love wildlife management. And so what you guys have done with the Habitat podcast has really intrigued me. It's cool because you're bringing basically a collective of all of these great deer hunters, habitat managers, landowners, wildlife biologists, etc. Why don't you share with our audience a little bit about what is a habitat podcast?
Yeah, great, great. Thank you so much. Sam Carosa is the man, by the way, good friend of mine and yours. And man, does he lay down some slammers there in Illinois.
He's been on a hot streak for sure.
He is, yeah, hot streak, understatement. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, the Habitat Podcast is a podcast for people who want to learn how to develop their land for better habitat, better hunting, better wildlife. Um, we talk to everybody from, the Mark Drury's and Dan Perez's of the world to, guys like me, just people who try to, dreamers, if you will, one of your terms there, that want to get their own piece of ground that might be on a lease right now or some family ground and
Hmm.
and want to own their own piece someday. Well, when that happens, what do you do? Where do you start? A lot of people can have paralysis by analysis with the habitat world, and we take that group of guys and gals and you know they learn along with me as I learn in this habitat journey. So that's kind of where it started. It started really on some of the old habitat forums back in the day. Like the QDMA forum was a really good resource
Hmm.
before they got rid of that. I was just following along with people who had farms already all over the country and the projects
Yeah.
they were doing.
Yeah.
And
100%. I was a devout member of the QDMA forum for quite a while too. Absolutely loved. I'm still friends with a lot of the people from across the country that I met through that one
nice.
platform.
Yeah, and I am too. Actually, that's how I met my partner Al at Vitalize Seed. That's how I met Sam originally. Um, and Brian, again,
Hmm.
co-host of the podcast. So there's been a lot of great like-minded people like you and I on there. And really the podcast I was a big Wired to Hunt fan, still am. And I thought, you know what? How can I remember and retain all of this information while I'm trying to learn it?
Yeah.
I don't have the greatest memory, so I thought let's record it in a podcast form and see what happens. And we've been really blessed. It's been a huge success. Very humbled by it every day, and just think really grateful to be doing that. So
Yeah. You
we're
guys are 300 and some episodes in, aren't you? Or more
I
than
was
that?
just I was just gonna look that up because I don't have the number. It's like 311, 312 right there. Next month will be the cap of 7 years.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
this is part of your life at that point. You know what
Oh,
I
for
mean?
sure. Yeah. Time flies by. It's almost like you've had another career there. But
Yeah. Yeah, it's all usually after hours and getting things done like the weekend warrior style. So
hmm
it's been awesome.
Well, kudos to you guys for bringing in so many awesome guests. You guys have, like you said, just a lot of regular Joes who most of the world has never heard of. And the hunting world or outdoor industry in general is kind of a relatively small circle. I think of it as being huge most of the time, but when you really get down to it, it's like, you mean you don't know who Mark Drury is? You mean you don't know who, like sometimes we get out, you step outside of our circle and you start to, you're like, what do you mean you don't know who the Lakoskis are? Like everybody knows that. And no, they don't. And because it's really, it's a niche, there's a few million people out there that are really tuned into it and subscribe to, all the channels, so to speak, and speak the language and know who's who within that. But there's, the people who are in that circle know where the wealth of knowledge lies. They know who is like who are the super killers when it comes to big trophy deer year in year, or the world's best elk hunters or muley or whatever it is that they're into. And I think um, you guys have done a really good job of blending your average Joe, people, your everyday guy or gal who, is just super passionate about it and has, a perspective to share and has some great info. And then bringing in like Craig Harper, bringing in, some of these guys who are people who are like my idols still to this day. Like people are like, man, someday. I think I've said that, and I've heard a lot of other people that you would think, boy, they're super knowledgeable. I've heard a bunch of them say, like, man, someday I just want to be Craig Harper. Like, dude
Yeah.
is sharp and smooth and all that. But anyway, so I encourage people if you are interested in learning more, like if you are just dipping your toes into the habitat management world, definitely go check you guys out with the Habitat Podcast and subscribe. You're going to get a lot of cool stuff there. We don't go as deep into habitat management on this channel. It's just not exactly what we're here for, but there's a lot of habitat junkies, I'm sure, that are following us. And if you haven't discovered Jared and his boys yet, go do it.
Thank you. And we have guys on there, like you. You've been on there episode 23, episode 136, I believe. Excellent conversations with some of these guys, and meeting the people I've met through the podcast has by far been the best part because everybody is as nutsy about this as I am. And I feel like if you own land or have an interest in land like I do, like you do, it's really secondhand to that responsibility of conservation. And I think that we're just opening the book of habitat management. Yeah, there might be a lot of people that you and I know that do this, but in general, I think the majority of the population doesn't know anything about this or put these practices into action yet. So I think in the next 10, 20 years, it's going to just blow up even more with people who have interest in this.
Yeah. So, and I think, I don't know if we've had personally this conversation before, but um, there's a natural progression amongst hunters. How you start as kind of you're a young kid and you just have that bloodlust and the excitement and adrenaline. You just want to shoot the first thing that comes by because you're like, I'm a hunter, and some people it takes longer to mature out through each step or each stage of progression than it does others. But generally, you eventually calm down through some of that, and you become, somebody who's after maybe a little bit bigger trophy, or maybe just a little bit more of the experience or whatever. And eventually, you progress to the point where you transform from just hunter, consumer to manager and caretaker, somebody a steward. And I think it's a really awesome concept. When you look at how that's how most hunters have always been since the beginning of time. But you guys, the information that you guys put out there encourages people to make that, I don't want to say final step, but make that big next step, the major transformation from just hunter to habitat manager caretaker. And you make the information so accessible that it just seems like something that they should do instead of just like something that they can do. And so I appreciate that about you guys. It shows a lot of care and a lot of responsibility about the land and the resource. So rather than just focusing on hunting and killing, it promotes conservation, and it encourages, and I guess is You do a really good job of advocating for hunting by showing non-hunters or just landowners and other people out there in the general public that there's more to it. Like these people are not just like out there to kill something. Like they're just super fanatical about caring for the resource and providing the best possible habitat you can.
I couldn't agree more. I like bow hunting mature whitetails as much as the next guy. Um, and the fact that you can change and manipulate your habitat, improve your habitat to not just make it better for hunting, you can all wildlife benefits from the stuff we talk about. So when you can go out there and do that while also improving your chances at your harvest goals,
Yeah.
it's a win-win. It's like deer hunting all year long. I'm always thinking if I cut these trees here, hinge cut here or whatever, make a funnel here, food plot here, all that comes into action October 1st. So you're really planning for the hunt all year long and just they just it's a great synergistic relationship with hunting and then managing the land. I love it.
Yeah. Cool. Who you don't have to name favorites, but let's say thinking back on the last several years of interviews, who are one or two of like your favorite interviews that you personally like that you just had your curiosity satisfied or that you felt like, man, I grew the most in what I understood about habitat or whatever from that conversation?
Yeah, there's been a few of them. Not to fluff you up too much, but I really enjoyed your episodes.
Stop,
You're
stop.
very knowledgeable. I also think Craig Harper, you nailed it. That's still one of my favorite episodes, episode
Yeah,
45. I'll never forget it. Um, Jim Ward has been on
yeah,
a couple episodes. That was really great. And these are guys who live and breathe this stuff every day.
yeah.
Um,
I'm pretty sure Jim Ward was born with a chainsaw in his hands.
I think so. I think so. And he's just so down to earth and relatable too. So it's just a great fit. Um, Tony LaPrat's a newer one that I interviewed.
I
He's
was
been kind
just
of
listening to that one a week ago. Yeah,
yeah, that one. I mean, I think it has to do with the way that it's delivered too. These guys have been preaching and pitching this stuff so long
yeah.
that they just make it so simple, stupid for you that you can't argue any of the. It's just like, duh, light bulbs are going off.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I like the most. There's others too. Todd Graff from bowhunting.com. I
Mm-hmm.
really like him, and he's very knowledgeable with his episode that he was on. Bill Winke. I know all these are big names, but they're also guys who literally do this all the time, and
Sure.
they're obsessed.
Yeah.
Those are some that stick out. Again, there's too many to remember,
Right.
but I literally learn something every time I hit the record button, which is pretty cool. I actually had a listener reach out yesterday and say, hey, can you actually, simplify some of the stuff you talk about? Because, when you started, you were green and new, but now you're
Mm-hmm.
7 years into this, you're starting to gloss over some of the introductory type explanations, and that just
Sure.
reminded me of where we are, where we need to be, and the thirst and hunger that people have for this
Right.
stuff.
When you guys first started, you have this natural curiosity and like, and you're being humble a little bit now, but you're I remember the first time I recorded with you guys, you're like, yeah, we just, just eager to learn from all these people. And maybe, maybe that was actually the case or you're just trying to fluff up my ego at the time. But you were like, yeah, I was just really interested and we're just, green about all these subjects. So that's the best part of this is that we're learning so much just getting to ask all these questions to these people. And over the last however many years you've been doing it in 320 or whatever episodes you have now, you have become an expert in your own right because you have just absorbed so much information from all of these people. You got to pick the minds of the greats, on this within this niche. And so like there's no denying that that has shaved years off of your learning curve. Like I'm sure have a more in-depth understanding of a lot of wildlife habitat practices and concepts and things that people are employing tactics in different parts of the country than I do or than somebody with a wildlife biology degree coming out of college has just because you've gotten to spend hours and hours and hours with some of the most knowledgeable people in the field. So I'm sure you're bringing a lot to the table as far as just general knowledge at this point too. And we're going to get into a little bit more of like, how are you implementing some of what you've learned personally and like what, tactics or what, things have you developed of your own, or tips that you learned from somebody that you're like, I'm definitely going to do that on my own farm and that sort of thing? But this led you mentioned earlier, to expanding your network, meeting a few more people in this niche, and you mentioned Al. I'd love for you to introduce him a little bit, talk about how that relationship came about, maybe, and what is the venture that you guys have launched and are growing together.
Yeah, thanks, Chase. Al Temeshko is a good friend of mine, now a business partner at Vitalize Seed Company. Um, we started out on the QDMA forums. I started interviewing him on the podcast. He was on a few times. We kind of had this small group of habitat guys in this text thread. Him, Brian, Sam, and I. Um, four of us, just guys who can text about this stuff all day long. Um, Getting to know Al quite a bit over the years, and he started off coming on kind of as our HP soil guy, Habitat Podcast soil guy, we called him. He really took a passion to soil biology, soil health, and the the total vast amount of information that can go into soil that we don't even know about. That's what really, sparks his interest. So that's kind of where it started. Along the way, he was making some mixes on his own farm in Ohio that he was using regeneratively, sorry, um, to avoid a huge fertilizer bill every year. He was getting like a
Hmm.
$1,500 fertilizer bill from his soil tests results, and just thought there has to be a better way to do this. Guys are saying you can't plant brassicas into clover. You can't do this. You can't do that. We all know there's a lot of ways to skin the cat.
Right.
So he started with these mixes. He was posting on some forums and he had some interest. And he came to me and he's like, "Hey, I've had a lot of interest in this. You have a very, you know, diverse sales and marketing background. You have the podcast. You talk to all these kinds of people. Maybe we should try something here." And with that, the idea of Vitalize Seed was born. And it's really, we're not the big buck on the front of the bag marketing company.
I love that,
Nope,
by the way.
not throwing shade at any other food block
Sure.
companies out there. There's some great ones and there's some flash in the pans. But this is really a regenerative I cannot say that word today. Regenerative system, spring mix, fall mix. What that does, they build off each other. So they're very diverse. We didn't invent this. Mother Nature's been doing this for years. And we ended up with a core line of products, two mixes, spring and fall. The spring mix really pumps a lot of nitrogen into the soil, grabs it from our atmosphere, puts it into the roots. A lot of legumes in that mix, and it really helps benefit your soil all summer long. And the fall mix is a heavy carbon ratio where they really balance each other out in the soil. So that ratio is, all of our seeds are measured out to certain amounts, and we have brassicas, grains, clovers, buckwheat, all in one mix. We have beans, sun hemp, sorghum, sunflowers, all in our spring mix, and they're all spread out the right way to where they work with each other. Um, so then we came up with a website, and we ended up started mixing, shipping out of our garages and our barns,
Sure. The
and
way every great business begins.
and it was just like, all right, get home from work, put the kids down, go out and start taping boxes, printing
Yeah.
labels. And now we are on our, let's see, our fourth year.
Hmm.
Um, and the first 3 years we had a drought every single year, in
Yeah.
certain parts of the country. And still, it's been a huge success. We're very transparent. We don't hide what's in the bag. We don't put fancy names on the seed types. We're
Hmm.
just trying to be honest and transparent, and people like that.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
we also put a huge emphasis on customer service, answering questions, helping people with soil tests, all the stuff that you might not get at a TSC,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of how that started.
Yeah, I love that. So the one of the things that you guys do really well, and like you mentioned, there's 4 years of drought, and you'd think, oh, we started a seed company, a drought, what a horrible, like you sell seed to somebody, they plant it, doesn't do what they hoped it would, probably because, nobody's food plots did what they hoped it would do when you have horrible weather or not enough moisture or whatever. But you guys, I think, kind of embrace that in some respect because one of the great things about building more organic matter in your soil and improving the soil health is that it's going to retain moisture better. If you're using your mixes spring and summer going into fall and that sort of thing, a drought is not as impactful as it is to the guy that's nuking everything and doing some tillage or whatever and then planting one monocrop, right? So these are, I learned this from following you guys. But
Yes, no, you're right. And so a lot of this also stems from that drought you're talking about. We're armoring the soil almost every day of the year. Um, we're reducing any soil disturbance, tillage, disking. Well, you can still use that if those are the tools you have. We're not against it. We just try to minimize it. There's ways to do things a little bit better.
mhm.
And then at the end of the day, we're fixing nitrogen into the soil. Nitrogen is fertilizer. I mean, that's N. That's the N and NPK. And eventually you can get off of synthetic fertilizers. Um, so there's really a win-win-win there. Yeah, sometimes the food plots don't look as pristine as a golf course or a monoculture of brassicas. Um, but guess what? Deer don't care. Wildlife doesn't care. So we've been really protecting our soils. I'm from Michigan. We have crummy, sandy, loamy soils here. Um, especially at my northern piece. And I mean, I had a beautiful plot last year, a ton of deer, and just Al's seeing the same thing. All of our clients are seeing the same thing, and it's really again, we didn't invent this. Mother Nature does this. It's diversity.
Yeah.
There's a lot of experts out there, the Gabe Browns and Ray Archuleta's of the world, who've been studying this stuff for years. We're just trying to simplify it, put it in a bag for you, and then answer any questions along the way.
Yeah.
Because again, with like I mentioned with the habitat management side, maybe getting more popular in the next 10, 20 years, regenerative ag is going to do the same on
Yeah,
the
it
food plot
absolutely
side.
is. Yeah, it is blown up.
Farmers have been
Uh,
doing it for years,
yeah.
but the food plot side, it's I think again, the next 10, 20 years, it's going to get even more and more popular once
Yeah.
people
And
understand it.
some of our audience people, our tribe members are homesteaders. Maybe they
Yeah.
dabble in hunting, and hopefully that's we've kept their attention long enough in this episode. But this is the products that you guys make, the blends that you guys put together. My wife and I this year we're expanding our garden operation a little bit, and last year we dabbled a little bit with some of your guys' products for cover crop and just we in our part of Illinois, we have some phenomenal soils. On my home farm in particular, we do not. We're on a clay knob that has a beautiful view and overlooks
Yes,
a
it
lot of
does.
timber and stuff. But for years somebody farmed it, tilled the whole 13-acre open field where our house and our homestead sits now, and ran hogs on it, I think, in the winter and whatever. And we have all the topsoil that ever used to be there is now down the bottom of the hillsides or in the. So we're trying to grow soil before we can even grow plants right now. We have some raised beds. We have an area that we till and we plant some potatoes and sweet corn and stuff. And we're adding a lot of organic matter and using horse manure and chicken litter and things like that.
Nice.
But yeah, but the biggest takeaway for me just the last couple of years was like, oh, I got a rototiller, for the 3 point on the back of the tractor. And I throw that stuff on there in the fall and blend it in and hopefully, just making compost basically. But learned from watching you guys and listening to a lot of Al's rants that I should be sowing some seed on that isn't just the garden that I'm trying to grow. I need to add living root to the soil. And we need to, like you said, armor the soil with some sort of a cover crop. And so we're just getting started in that. And I'm pretty excited to see what that's going to do for our gardening and for our homestead.
I mean, you're already on the correct path. I mean, you named a bunch of great things there. And what's cool about this sort of system is the different plants do different things and have different root depths, right? So sun hemp, you pull some of these sun hemp plants out, you can see the little nitrogen nodules forming on the roots.
Hmm.
We're grabbing nutrients from 3, 4 foot down up to 2 inches down, bringing that all up into the plant. And then when we terminate that plant, it's just a layer of compost, if you will, that sits there on top of the soil and breaks down. You're building topsoil, you're growing soil. I love that term. Don't call it dirt. Al might call you, and it's more of a because, like you said, like farming for years, the dirt becomes more of a material, if you will, just a sort of item that you're growing things in. Like, so
Hmm.
if you can make that living with biology, um, doing the work for us, living roots in the soil as many days of the year as you can, um, that's where the proof in the pudding is.
Hmm. Awesome. Well, it's very cool. You guys have a great mission there, and I like how you're doing business. So I'd say definitely keep that up. I hope it explodes and it's more than you can handle, and you have to hire a whole team of people to keep that business going because it's a cool movement and it's something that, again, I think you again. I'm not trying to throw shade on any other food plot companies because I know a lot of the people who are in that industry and they're great people. They make a quality product, but they know what sells. They know for years and years, everybody who's watching the Monster Buck videos, they want the magic bullet. So they're going to go to the store shelf and they're going to look and something that shows some dude holding a giant rack in front of that's, they want to see a magazine cover picture of a food plot with a giant buck. And that's how they package things and that's how they sell their product. But um, it doesn't do us a whole lot of favors, I don't think, with regards to even just because that's on every Farm and Fleet and Farm King and TSC shelf, and people walk through there who aren't hunters, but they're landowners, they're agricultural people, and they kind of see that, and that's how that becomes everything they know about hunters is what our industry puts out, and so when they see that kind of stuff, it's just like, yeah, that's all those guys care about. That's just another big rack, and that's all they care about. And so you guys creating a product that is your main focus is not just on like uh picking on their desire to harvest a mature deer. You're showing, hey, our product is a little different. It'll get you that end result, but our product is geared at improving the quality of the soil health and feeding all wildlife and pollinator species and so on. And so like you have a lot more holistic um, I don't know, persona as a
Yeah.
brand, and I love that. I think it's something that there's a mind shift, and people are starting to look at products like that and brands like that as being more favorable. So, I hope that really does you guys well because I think it should.
Yeah, thank you. I think, the consumers are getting smarter, right? There's already a ton of companies out there with a big buck on the front. Are we losing some business because we don't have that on there? Maybe. Um, we also don't want to just limit ourselves to deer hunters. We have flower farms that plant a lot of our products. Who'd ever thought
Nice.
that? Al and I
Yeah.
wouldn't have. You know, gardeners. We have a garden boost product we've been talking about for years. It's just people with orchards.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of other uses out there. Homesteaders, great one to come across this. And yeah, did we all harvest great deer last year on these plots? Brian, Sam, Al, and I. Yeah, and that's awesome. But we're doing it with a kind of a different ethos, different mindset,
That's
because yeah, we represent. I mean, it's all there. It's already been proven. It's all Mother Nature's been doing it, like I keep saying, and we just want to be transparent and help other people understand it because there's a lot that goes into it. Al's the Bill Nye
oh
of it. So how do
yeah.
we how do we make people like me understand um, how this works and get on
Mhm.
that path? We're just trying to simplify it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad there's people like Al who really geek out on this stuff. Because man, I start listening to some of his TikToks or his reels and stuff, and I'm with him for about the first 20 seconds, and then I'm just like, whoosh,
Yep.
what? Okay, you gotta slow that down or go back to speaking English again. And it's fantastic that somebody is that fanatical about all of what it what goes into developing that product and what goes into really improving soils and understanding the chemistry and the biology of it in a way that like is going to result in successful food plotting, successful gardening, successful wildlife management. So I get the end result of it. Um, I don't have to watch him for very long or your guys' content on the Vitalize page and stuff to know like, all right, these guys know their stuff. I thanks for boiling all that down and making a blend, a product that I can go plant with confidence and then not have to dig as deep into the research as he did. But
Yes.
he is passionate about it, no doubt.
Well, I think that's why we work so good together. I've talked to how many people over the past 7 years, and I can provide a perspective of what guys like me need. And
Hmm.
when it starts to go over my head, I'm there to bring it back together with us. And that's I think that's why it's been such a great success so far. So
Yeah, for sure. All right. So let's talk hunting a little bit. Obviously, that's what led you down all these different rabbit trails because you're an entrepreneur. I've heard you say that, call yourself that before. I would absolutely agree. I think that's you have to be, I don't want to say glutton for punishment, but yeah, starting all these new ventures is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. You have to have a spouse that gives a lot of grace and understanding. If you're married, you also have to really just love what you do and be passionate and excited about all these different things. But they all kind of center around, and I'm going to give credit to Tony LaPratt for his interview with you. I heard him say this, and I made a mental note of it. Um, he said he built a life around his hobbies. He built a basically his lifestyle, his career was because of his passions. Clearly, that's what you're doing, with some of these ventures. So, how did you get started in hunting and, what's your story?
yeah, that Tony nailed it. So I started out. My dad was always a duck hunter first, and then he would go off to deer camp for rifle season. So one weekend a year. Um, I always grew up wanting to go along. Was too young, couldn't tag along. Guys at camp, the whole thing. I'm a little kid, and then I'd go home and I'd watch the first like VHS monster buck videos from way back then when Michael Waddell was a little squirt, and just got obsessed somehow.
Yep.
And so finally, hunter's safety came around. Went to that at our local gun club in Grand Haven, and as soon as I passed the test on that Sunday, I said, "Dad, let's go get a license. Let's go duck hunting." He's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! I mean, we just spent 12 hours in here. You want to go right now?" I said, "Yeah, let's go." So, you know, God bless him. He took me out there. We got our tag and or our license, and we snuck down this little two track that leads out to the Grand River. And he's like, be careful. At the end, there could be ducks. You never know. Always be ready. And sure enough, we jumped a small flock of mallards, and I got my first duck that day. Um, it was awesome. I shot the first shot was an immature drake, so it looked like a hen. So he called me off the second shot while the others
Hmm.
flew away, and man, I was just so happy and so proud. That was 12 years old, I believe he had to be at that time. And ever since then, it's just gotten progressively worse as an obsession and a lifestyle. So that's really where it started. Then I started getting to go to deer camp. Um, I remember he'd set me up by the road, so he'd walk in deeper and we'd hunt public land. Nobody had any land in my family. And I would sit up there, I'd rattle the horns. I mean, we're talking Michigan public land, like
Yeah.
up in the um
So quite a bit of pressure.
quite a bit of pressure.
Yeah.
Yep, for those who don't know, it's pretty tough. And the Manistee National Forest was the spot. I ended up getting my first buck up there, a spike. Had already been shot before. That's what kind of pressure we're talking about. And I don't know, college came, and that's when I had a little more time. I started scheduling my classes like all Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I
Hmm.
had Tuesday, Thursdays off. And that I would just bow hunt. I found some permission spots around there and flinging arrows and everything, and learned a ton. And that's probably where the archery obsession and chasing the larger deer started.
Hmm.
Um, and then later in life, you start to to realize, well, man, I'm in Southeast Michigan now, and it's hard to find land around here. This is one of the most busiest areas of the state.
Yeah.
Um, so how do I get a better hunting spot? How do I do this? And that's when I started saving up a little bit of money to make this land dream come true. But just always being one with God, one with nature out in the woods, watching the sunrise, things that most people don't get to see every day.
Yeah.
Watching the chickadees land on your arrow, all that sort of stuff. It's just like my therapy, where I feel at peace and kind of gives me that reset. So all that kind of just makes me feel better. It's who I am. It's become a part of you. I don't think anybody can call it a hobby who's in it like me. It's definitely a lifestyle for sure.
Yeah. I can relate to 100% of that. My upbringing, I love hearing deer hunters whose story begins with upland or waterfowl. Um, I grew up a deer hunter and doing quite a bit of small game hunting and coon hunting and stuff because that was my dad's first passion when we were little kids. And didn't go waterfowl hunting until I got to college and had a roommate that was a fanatical duck hunter. And love him like a brother, always will. He was determined he was going to convert me to a waterfowl hunter, and so I tagged along like that 12-year-old kid, not knowing what I was doing or whatever, but excited to go. I went with him. I couldn't tell you how many times while, in the years that we were in school together, and still to this day, I have never killed a duck or a goose.
Oh, really?
and, it got to the point like he lived an hour and a half away, and he would go home on the weekends. And, his family, he grew up right next to Carlisle Lake, Southern Illinois, great, kind of a waterfowl mecca in that region. And he would go home and just limit out. They would have birds on him like crazy, and he'd come back to school Sunday night or Monday morning. He'd be telling me all about it. Like, dude, you got to come home. Let's skip class on Thursday and let's go duck hunt. There's tens of thousands of birds in there right now, and we would go and we would get skunked. He just kept doing it, kept taking me, and finally one day we're sitting there and we see a few birds way off in the distance, and he just looks at me and goes, "Well, we tried, Chase, but you're never gonna make a duck hunter." He says, "I'm pretty sure you're jinxed." What are you
No,
gonna
that's
do?
that's the way it goes. I
Yeah,
mean,
man. I mean, I still love it. I had a lot of fun and good memories, but it just became a joke that like I have m multiple other friends that were big waterfowlers, and they're like, "Don't take Chase. You know how that's gonna turn out. There's not
that's
gonna
good to
be
know in
any."
the future.
Yeah, yeah. Invite me on a deer hunt, but don't take me duck hunting unless you just want to have a good nap.
Exactly. Exactly. And deer hunting, you don't shoot a deer every time you go out either. And
Nah.
I've duck hunted quite a bit and fished quite a bit. So
Yeah.
it's all part of it. But at least you were getting out there and that was nice of him to bring you along and try. That's what we all need to do.
He's taken, who knows, over the years. I'll bet, who knows how many people he took on their first successful duck hunt and youth hunts and all this stuff. He was just convinced that I was going to be the next success story. I don't know. Anyway, so let's hear more about one of your favorite hunts. If you've got one, I mean, reach as far back in the memory banks as you go, because we've talked here about um, why hunting is important to you, and what it means to you and how it's just kind of a part of who you are as an individual. But you got any really memorable hunt that stands out in your mind?
Yeah, I have quite a few of them. One kind of cliche one this year with my son. He's 6. We got out there and we shot a doe together. I shot it, and he was just so amped. That's a good one. The one I'm thinking of right now is probably my first nice mature deer that I put on the wall.
Yeah.
I was up at college. I met a friend of mine, and he was a local in that town. Um, After a few years of helping him out on the farm, I was able to go out there and hunt with him. And we had one night. It was the day before Halloween. It was an evening, and we had seen a buck kind of go to the south end of the farm that morning. So we decided we're gonna make a move. We're gonna go mobile, as the kids call it today. And we had climbers, and he went up in this oak tree, and I went down the hill and by this apple tree, and we could see each other. Um, and This buck came out in this field chasing does around right in the last hour of light. got all the way up under his oak tree with the does, and one of the does busted him in the tree. So that sent all the deer running. The buck ran right back where it came from, out of our lives. And I'm texting him, we're laughing at each other, this and that. And next thing you know, I'm watching and watching and watching, and I look over, and this buck is in the timber coming down towards this apple tree. And we're about 100 yards apart. Um, he's working in, and I'm in this little popple with my climber. I look like a giant blob up there, and stand up, get ready, and this buck's working in. Keeps looking up the hill at those couple deer that were still up there at that oak tree, kind of meandering down. I don't know if he's trying to scent check or what he was trying to do, but he knew something wasn't right. I ended up getting a shot at him at about 25 yards. Um, hit him, I think, lungs and liver. And but the best part was my buddy Tom, he's in the tree and he sees this buck finally. And he goes, "Oh my gosh, there's the buck." He's saying this to himself. "There's the buck. Where's Jared? Oh, there's Jared. Oh, he's drawn back. And then the arrow releases. Like he watched the whole thing
That's
from the
cool.
tree. We ended up finding that buck later that evening, and a nice big 8 point, still the heaviest deer I think I've shot, 200 pounds dressed, on my wall here, and my friend he got killed in a UTV accident later in life. He was in my wedding, is a good friend of mine, so that one kind of just is pretty special.
Mm.
And the fact that he got to watch it the whole time after he screwed up on it was just we ribbed each other for that for years, man. It was awesome.
I gotta share something with you. You know, the hunting experiences that you share with your friends, your buddies, your brother, your dad, or whatever, they somehow just mean so much more to you when that person is gone.
Yeah.
The friend of mine that I just shared with you that really tried hard to get me into waterfowl hunting, he passed away when my first son was just a few months old.
Oh man.
And he carries his namesake. His middle name is named after him. But it's wild, hearing your story about that because it's hunting is that experience that you just carry with you every day, whether you're in the woods or not. You carry those memories, and so when you get to spend that kind of time with somebody who is just like it's a bond, and it's like even if they're just a buddy you meet somewhere casually, they almost become family when you share those memories that are like some of your favorite memories that you think about all the time, or you see that buck on the wall and you think about that hunt, you think about the time you spent with that person. Dude, that's pretty awesome. I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Yeah, yeah, and thanks for sharing that from your side as well. I think I've had a lot of great stories. I'm blessed to have some a nice wall of deer that I'm very proud of, and man, they're all really special. And I don't know why I picked that one today, but that's the one I picked.
You mentioned not having any family farms as you were growing up. You guys were public land hunters. Um, what's changed? Where are you guys at in your land journey at this point in life, and how'd you get there?
Yeah, great question. I think hunting public land my whole life, while my best friend down the road had an uncle with an 80, another uncle with an 80, a grandma with a 40, just out hunting me all the time, you know, really sparked this interest to someday say I want my name on a piece of ground. Um, it had to be why, because I don't have a lot of buddies that own land around me here. Kind of solo on that side of things. And that must be why I got started. Currently, I own 40 acres near my house here, about a half hour away, and then 70 acres way up north in northern Michigan, about 3.5 hours from here, um, up in the some public land country up there, and so that's where I'm at currently. It started with a 15-acre piece, and I have aspirations to someday own my dream farm. I don't know what that is yet or where that's at, but I just don't I'm not done yet. I just don't have the total perfect piece yet. And maybe that'll never happen, but I'm gonna keep working towards that goal. So that's kind of where we're at currently.
Awesome. So tell me about the 40. How old were you when you became a landowner with the
Yeah.
15? And do you still have the 15 or did you sell that to buy something else?
Yeah, so I'm 37 now. I was 30 when I bought that 15 acres. Um, I didn't, like most people, I didn't think I was going to be able to afford land. I had, let's see, yeah, I had twin girls at that time. So they were four. My wife was staying home with them because childcare was crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you swing this, But I just made a goal in my head and started looking at land. I looked at land for probably 3 years on the internet, probably when I should have been working. And man,
I, I wouldn't know anything about that.
I think yeah, exactly. I know you're being facetious. I think all of these listeners on both your podcast and mine probably
For
have a
sure.
similar
I'd
hobby
hate
or
I'd hate
habit.
to know how many cumulative hours our audiences have burned on the clock while they're scrolling through Landwatch or looking at
Oh,
listings.
land watch was a huge one.
Yeah.
I ended up getting a realtor was a friend of mine's son. Um, so we started looking at some land together. We probably only walked 4 or 5 pieces, um, just because I kind of already knew what I wanted by spending so much time on the internet.
Hmm.
This 15 acres was about an hour and 20 minutes from my house in a nice county in Michigan, the central part of the state. And it's just like one crummy picture from the road in the snow. It had been split off of a 75, the other two parcels sold. Um, it was $50,000 back in 7 years ago, so
Hmm.
2018. Um, and I'm thinking, well, 20% of that, man, that's 10 grand. I don't have 10 grand lying around. Well, taxes were coming up, and I had a little return coming, and I ended up calling some banks and doing some research and figured out that you could put 5% down on something 20 acres or less with a certain credit union here in Michigan. And
Hmm.
maybe all banks do that. I don't really know. Um, then I was like, okay, that's $5,000. That's closer. And then with the return and my wife being pretty angry at me, I was able to swing it and ended up kind of putting the deposit down. We made an offer. I think it was 55K. It was listed for. I think we offered 45 and got it for 50. And again, my wife the whole time is going, "What are you doing? We have twin 4-year-olds.
Yeah,
I'm not working. Like, how is this a good idea?" And I didn't have a great answer for her.
sure.
Um, I just kept thinking in my head, like, I really want this, and it's going to be a good investment. We can always sell it, the whole deal. Ended up being again, had some junk piled at the property next door. It was not a pretty parcel. But I thought with all the stuff I've been watching on these forums, I can make this into a good parcel.
Hmm.
I didn't know how, but I knew I was determined and I could figure it out.
Yeah.
I held on to that piece for 5 years. I killed three nice 3.5-year-old or older bucks on that over the 5 years and some does. Um, awesome piece. More trail camera pictures than because I mean it's just I couldn't get out there to hunt very much. It was
Hmm.
an hour and a half
Hour
or
and a
hour and
half.
20 away.
Yeah, that's hard when you have young kids.
It is, and that may have behooved me a little bit in the sense of low pressure.
Sure.
Um, but I was able to test out all the stuff I was learning on the podcast out there,
Yeah,
and
you
it was
needed a proving ground.
yeah, and it was affordable because the payments on a I don't know if I did 30-year mortgage on it or whatever, were $200. So it was pretty affordable. Like there's a way to skin this cat and make it affordable.
Hmm.
You just have to get creative. And so I was able to do small food plots, small apple tree plantings. I wasn't trying to outfit a 160-acre piece with apple trees, right?
Right.
So all this was done on a very small scale, and I learned a ton. And then I listed it, and a podcast listener ended up buying it. So
Nice.
that was pretty cool. He's a
Yeah.
friend of mine still to this day, and he ended up, and then him and his wife have shot 3 or 4 deer out there since they've owned it.
That is really cool when you get to hear the story continue.
Yeah. So I then I sold that, went up north and bought a 70-acre piece. Land's a little bit cheaper up there.
Hmm.
The hunting is not near as good, and the deer population is a lot lower. But with a timber contract in mind and a lot of valuable timber on that property, I saw that. Um, it has a conservation easement on it, so I think that's why a lot of people pass by it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rugged terrain, very steep. But really, I mean, figure it out. It's my favorite saying to my kids. I say every single day, figure it out. And we did. And so that ended up being affordable after the timber. Ended up doing a harvest job on that, and still in the process of building that parcel up. I spent some of the timber money on some food plots because in that area it's all timber country and clear cuts.
Okay.
There is no cornfield nearby. So I'm still in the process of building that, and we are able to harvest a nice 8 point off that this year, year three of ownership up there. So
Awesome.
yeah, that's a pretty cool spot. It's gorgeous. Northern Michigan is one of the best places in the world. I'll move up there tomorrow if I could. And there's there's some other stuff to do up there for the wife and kids, which I think is important too. There's
For
some
sure.
a town nearby. Skiing isn't all too far away. We That's like the one thing we do as a family is we all ski, and it's just been a blessing. And I see that spot staying that way and staying, owned for a very long time. So,
Awesome. Oh, that's cool. So, and now you're kind of exposing your daughters to it a little bit, getting them out there, hopefully, at least instilling some of those core memories with them, spending time with dad out in the woods, whether they become hunters or not, right? But do you have aspirations for them to become sportsmen too?
oh yeah, I hope they do. They're they're 10 now. They're twins. They've been going with me since they were 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So I drag them along. We all freeze, get candy, have a good time, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Um, they've been going along for years, but they haven't really expressed an interest in harvesting something themselves until this past year. Uh, I've always heard people say, I'm sure you've even said it, I don't pressure them too hard into it because I want them to enjoy it and do it and not lament it. So
Right.
now they're saying to the point where Dad, I think I want to shoot a deer this year. And I go, well, hey, if you do, I'll give you a $50 gift card to whatever store you want to go to. Like, I'll bribe them. I don't care. And and so
Incentivize.
yeah, and so I asked them the other day, and my one daughter's like, yeah, I do. I want to practice, and I want to harvest a deer. And I'm like, okay, we'll make it happen. Um, my son, on the other hand, is the opposite. He's that bloodlust kid you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, where
Yeah.
every deer we see, Dad, why aren't you shooting that deer? Shoot that deer. Can I shoot it? You're not going to shoot it. Let me shoot it.
Yeah.
You know, I,
I'll do
I
it,
don't, I
Dad.
don't think he'll be an issue.
Yeah, kids are so different. They are just night and day different how they're wired, what their interests are, what their aptitudes are, and that sort of thing. So we have two boys, and they are one is practically well, he would most definitely be a mountain man if he thought that was a possible career path for him. He would just move
Awesome.
to the woods and hunt and trap and live outdoors all the time. The other one, he enjoys it, he understands it, and he appreciates it. He does not have that bloodlust. And so it's like you always carefully like encourage and invite, but don't push. And so I don't know, someday will they both be like lifelong hunters? I don't know. I hope so. But they all have, each kid is going to have their own passions. And wherever God's path takes them, if it takes them far away from the farm, if it takes them far away from the woods during hunting season, so be it. I hope they're following God's will. I hope they're, finding what excites them and motivates them. And I hope they find something they love that they can share with their family. But it won't break my heart if they come home for deer season every year. So,
Yeah, and that's why I think yeah, and I totally agree. We put all of our kids on God's path as well, and however it shakes out, I'm gonna be their support. Whether kid wants to wrestle or play basketball, we coach basketball, the whole thing, right? So, but I think that you have a leg up on me because you're living on your farm and you're living your dream where you get to experience it every day. And I have to make a dedicated trip, time out of the schedule,
yeah.
plan to go get 2 hours on a Sunday sometime.
Yeah. I try not
Um,
to take that for granted
Yeah,
because just even with it in your backyard, it's so easy to get so busy
true.
that, like I said, my 12-year-old wants to hunt all the time, and he understands like during the heat of deer season, he's like, I get it. We're not going to tread through the woods to go plink squirrels every day. He would love to, but he also gets pretty excited about mature deer when we see him on trail camera and see him in the woods. And so he's like, I know we don't want to blow them all out, Dad. But the minute we're kind of like, all right, I think we're done deer hunting for the year. He wants to rabbit hunt. He wants to squirrel hunt. He wants to go squall coons. And so it's fun to have him that excited about it. But also it's so easy in today's age to be so busy that it's hard to just find 45 minutes or an hour, like to get home before dark and say, all right, grab your rifle, put on your boots, let's go, and go for a hike and go plink some bushy tails. But I try to remind myself regularly how blessed we are that it's that accessible to us and try to take advantage of that and not just be like, we'll go tomorrow. It's so easy to go. We'll go tomorrow. And then we haven't gone in weeks. It happens.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And I think that the foundations we're putting in, at least I pray that the foundations we're putting in now will come back to them. They will come back for deer camp, hopefully,
Hmm.
maybe when they're out of college or have some kids or whatever. I'll be there. I'll be there ready and take the grandkids or whatever to facilitate that. So hopefully the work we're putting in now will pay off later.
Awesome. I'm sure it will, man. Well, with that, I think we can just about wrap up. First, I want to again invite everybody to go follow the Habitat Podcast on all the socials and subscribe on YouTube. Also, follow Vitalize Seed. Check them out. Go visit their website. They've got some killer summer blends and stuff for your fall food plots. So definitely check them out. If you are a food plotter, a homesteader looking to build soil, I do endorse them and encourage you guys go check that out. They're a great company, good people, and killer products. So, Jared, how do people find you aside from those companies? If they want to connect with you directly, what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you just want to message me on any of those areas we have, the Vitalize and Habitat podcast on all the places you would find social media. Um, Hit me up. You can email us as well. I'm on Facebook under Jared Michael. Uh, However you guys want to connect, we live and breathe this stuff and just blessed. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. I love your show. What you and your wife are doing there is inspiring. So keep it up.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Look forward to being a guest again sometime here soon on your guys' platform. We'll dig a little deeper into the habitat stuff, and hopefully we'll do this again sometime soon.
Awesome, Chase. Thank
All
you.
right. Have a great year, Jared. And everybody, thank you for joining. And we'd appreciate it. Again, if you come in and subscribe on YouTube, join our tribe. You will not regret getting our newsletter. We keep you guys updated of what's going on with all of our guests upcoming content, our new upcoming content, building the Facebook group still for landowners and dreamers. So you guys can go in there and share your personal land journey, share stories. We're sharing information in there. And we want you guys to get engaged with our community of tribe members. And again, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of Land Your Ground.